Hello all anti-chess enthusiasts. With this video I'm really pleased to announce something new in my YouTube channel. This is the series called Anti-Chess Education. In this series I'm gonna show you how to play certain openings. I'm gonna show you opening traps. I'm also gonna teach you middle game strategies. And last but not least, I'm gonna teach you how to play in the endgame. I'm Anti-Chess Super Grandmaster Preslav Petkov. I'm the current over-the-board Anti-Chess World Champion. I hope you will like the series. I also hope that you'll find the videos beneficial. If this is the case, let's get started. So, in anti-chess, there are a couple of moves that are very bad for both sides. For white, one of these moves is e4. It's actually one of the worst moves white can play. Yes, you heard me right. e4 is one of the worst moves white can play. And in this video I'm gonna teach you how to beat it. First, let's flip the board. Why am I doing this? Because when I have been white, I've never started with e4, but I have faced it. So it's much more comfortable for me to watch it from black's perspective. Here, for those of you who have never seen anti-chess might think, well, after e4 I should play d5. White is obligated to capture the pawn on d5. Black is also obligated to capture the pawn on d5 with the queen, and we get the Scandinavian defense. This is for the people who are really used to watching real chess. But right now we are looking at anti-chess, so this is not the case. When white opens with e4, the white squared bishop is being opened up here on the f1 a6 diagonal. And the correct move for black is b5. Here, white is forced to capture the pawn on b5, and here there is a very interesting move about to be seen, which is knight to f6. Some of you might think, why do I have to play knight to f6 when I threaten the pawn on e4? Well, this is called an intermediate move, but I'm not gonna explain what it means, so let's just not think about it for the time being. When black plays knight to f6, white is forced to capture the pawn on d7. And keep in mind that black is not in check. The king has no royal power in anti-chess, so it can be given away, it can be sacrificed, there is no problem at all. Right here, black has a couple of options. Black might want to take the bishop on d7 with the b8 knight. Black can want to take the bishop with his bishop. Also the bishop can be taken with the queen, also with the king, and also with the f6 knight. But also black can take the pawn on e4. And the correct move is to take the pawn on e4 with the f6 knight. Why is that? Let's see. Right now white has two options, either to take the king or take the white squared bishop of black. Let's see what happens when white takes the king first. So we have this. Right now black has a couple of options. Take the pawn on d2 with the queen, take the pawn on d2 with the knight, or take the pawn on f2 with the knight. Here there is not much difference, but it's right to take one of these two pawns with the knight, not with the queen. Keep your queen on d8. What happens next? Let's first take the pawn on f2. Right now white has two options, either to take the knight on f2 with the king, or take the pawn on f7. Let's first take the knight on f2. Here, black has two options, either to take the pawn on d2 or take the bishop on e8. Black has, and is like really crucial for black to take the pawn on d2. If they take the bishop, they actually become lost. But I'm gonna show you a bit later why is that. So, let's say that black takes here. And right now white has a couple of options. The queen can be taken with 3 pieces, or white can take the pawn on f7. Let's say that white decides to take the pawn on f7. Here black has a couple of options, 4 options to be more precise. Here it's really crucial to keep in mind that black has to take a protected piece of white. So this limits the options to 2. Either take the pawn on c2 which is protected by the queen, or take the c1 bishop which is also protected by the queen. But here the right move is to take the bishop on c1. Because if black takes the pawn on c2, then the queen takes the black queen on c2. Now white really threatens a lot of stuff right here, and it becomes a bit unclear what's going to happen next. Like, it might be still winning for black, which I'm almost certain this is the case, but I would just prefer to take the bishop on c1 because the queen is kinda hidden here behind these pawns, and right here on this c1 h6 diagonal there is no black piece right away. But here the worst piece of white is the bishop on f7. Why is that? Because it has already captured a couple of black's pieces, and it's actually in black's half. And here black is like very free to decide what to play. Of course, they have to give away something. Here, the most accurate move is bishop to e6. Bishop e6 happens first, and now rook to g8. Bishop to g8 happens, and now actually black has a free move. Let's call it so. A waiting move also can be called, whatever you prefer. Because black already knows the next move of white, which is bishop takes the pawn on h7. So now black has some time to decide what to play next in order for the bishop to keep capturing black's pieces. Why did I show you these arrows right here? It's because it's really crucial to swipe this bishop all over this g8 h7, h7 e4, e4 a8 diagonal, so white can keep capturing pieces. For this reason, black has to play g6. White captures the pawn on h7, and now we have the very same case where black knows the next move of white, which is bishop captures the pawn on g6. So again, black has enough time to decide what to play, how to do it, and so on. If you remember a bit before, I showed you this diagonal here, like this, like swipe of the bishop right over from this part of the board to this part of the board. So if white has to have their bishop on e4, black has to play e5. So now they can control the e4 square with the pawn next, right after white captures the pawn on g6. And when they do it, right now, black plays e4. White captures the pawn on e4, and now, again, black has a free move, a waiting move, where they can decide what they should play next in order for white to keep taking black's pieces. In this case, white's next move is bishop takes the rook on a8. But black really needs to have something, have a piece that goes on the a4 square. Why is that? Well, let's see. So, right now, as I told you, black has enough time to decide what to do. I believe the most accurate move here is pawn on a5, which again can just control the a4 square, so it will be right in time for black to sack all of their pieces. Let's see how this happens. So as I told you, white is forced to capture the rook on a8. And right now, since black controls the a4 square with the pawn, they can really force white to take all of these three pieces here and then just remain with this bishop, which can be very easily given away at the end. So here black should continue with knight to c6, making white capture the knight on c6 with the bishop. And now you can see that the white bishop is right here on this diagonal, the a4 e8 diagonal, where black has these two pawns remaining. So black plays a4 next, bishop to a4 happens, c6 happens, bishop takes on c8 happens, c6 sorry, and bishop to a3 is the last piece that black gives away. And whatever white captures with, black is declared victorious. So this is one of the sequences of e4 where black can easily win. But let's see another sequence. For example, let's move right on move 3, where in the first case white took the king on e8. Let's see what happens if white takes the bishop on c8. Well, more or less we will get the very same position, but let's see how it happens. So white takes the bishop on c8. Again, black has a couple of options. And of course, just don't try to remember this by heart or something. But in this case, I'm just gonna stick to the same moves so it can be just easier for you viewers to see how it needs to be done. So right after white took the bishop on c8, let's again take on f2 with the knight. King takes on f2 is the only option for white. Queen takes on d2. Now white again has three options, and wherever they take with, the most problematic piece is the white squared bishop being on c8, which is right in black's half. So now black can really comfortably start sucking their pieces. Let's see how this will happen. As a beginning, black has two very good moves. They are knight to a6 or pawn to f5. In both cases, black will win the game. To be honest, I really don't have any specific preference how this should be done. More or less it will convert to the same position. But yeah, let's just start with f5. Bishop takes on f5, and now if you remember a bit before what I told you, when black has enough time to decide what to play, where black knows white's next move, well, this is more or less the same case, with the difference that the pawn on h8 on h7 is defended by the rook on h8. So in this case, black has to move the rook away on g8, so white can just start grabbing piece after piece. So bishop to h7 happens, and now again black knows what white is going to play next. So here again, like, the purpose of black is to make white capture just everything. Preferably, like, again, white should end up having their bishop on a8 after taking the rook on a8. So let's see how this can be achieved. Well, there are a couple of options. For example, black can play something like knight to d7. And when white takes the rook on g8, now black can, for example, play king to f7. Don't forget that you can give away your king. There is no royal power, there are no checks, there are no castles, because this is anti-chess. So either of the sides, both white and black can just give away the king whenever they prefer. There's like no obligation, there is like no correct moment where this should be done. If you can just give away the king, you can do it freely. There are no limits. Anyway, so right after black plays king to f7, white can just take the king, which is the only move, of course. Right here, black should play something like g6. Otherwise, if they play something like e6, this pawn becomes a bit far away from the action, because the white's bishop will end up taking the pieces something like on these diagonals here, and like the g pawn will remain right on the other side of the board. So let's play g6 first. Bishop to g6 happens. Rook to 8, very crucial move. So black can just force the white bishop to come on this part of the board, the right part of the board of black. So here bishop to e8 happens, and now black again has enough time to decide what they should play. I would really prefer e6, because when the white bishop takes the knight on d7, again black has enough time to decide what to do. So this is what I already see here, like when the bishop ends up on e6, somehow black has to give away these two pawns here. And this can be achieved by black playing c5, so they can control the square of c4. And when white takes the pawn on e6, black has to play c4. Here white can decide with which piece they can take the pawn on c4. But both of the moves are just losing on the spot. If white takes with the bishop, black just plays a6, bishop takes, bishop to a3, b3, and black is victorious. If white takes with the knight on c4, black just plays a5, knight to a5, bishop to a3, b to a3, and again black is victorious. So this is another sequence of how to beat the e4. Yeah, so before we finish with this video, I really want to show you something which really can be a bit tricky. At this moment, if white takes the pawn on d7, on f7, sorry, it's really crucial for black to take the queen on d1 with the knight. When your opponent, guys, has finished the takes, in this case the bishop on f7 doesn't threaten anything more here, you really have to take defended pieces of your opponent, so you can be the one that can keep forcing your opponent to take pieces. Because for example, if you take the rook on h1, now it's up to white to decide what to play, because they cannot take anything more of black. So when you take the queen on d1, king takes on d1, queen takes on d2, whatever white takes with doesn't really matter. I don't know, let's take just with the king. Again, white has this bishop on f7, which is very problematic here and can just literally take everything. Let's see how this happens. Here I would still go for bishop to e6. We really had a very similar position a bit before in one of the other sequences. So after bishop to e6, white takes the bishop on e6, rook to g8, bishop to g8, and again black has enough time for a waiting move to play, and can just decide what to do. Like here again, black has really need to aim for the a4 square. For this reason, as a beginning, let's say that black plays g6, and after bishop to h7 happens, again black has enough time to decide what to play, because black knows that white's next move is bishop takes the pawn on g6. So here again, the white's bishop really needs to come over to the other side of the board where the remaining pieces of black are. So here again, very similar to one of the sequences I just showed you, black has to play e5, bishop takes the pawn on g6, e4 on the board, bishop takes on e4, and again black really knows what white will play next. So black can just play a waiting move. Again, black has to aim for the a4 square in this case, just the way it was a bit before. So let's say that black plays a5. White takes the rook on a8. We have knight to c6, bishop to c6, a4, bishop to a4, c6, bishop to c6, bishop to a3, and now whatever white takes with, black is just victorious. Yeah guys, I think I really covered all the main three sequences, how to beat e4 in anti-chess as a first move. I really hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that you really liked it. I hope that you found it beneficial, useful, helpful. Try to implement these moves in your games and you'll see that you will start beating the beginners. That's it for this video guys. Make sure to like the video, provide your comment in the comment section below, subscribe to my channel, and see you very soon. Bye bye, take care, see you in my next video.